So Judith, hello.
Hi there.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So this is Judith, and Judith is Director of Policy and Operations for the Electronic Money Association. Tell me a little bit about the Electronic Money Association, Judith.
So we've been running for about 20 years. We have around 100 members, and they're all regulated e-money institutions, payment institutions, crypto asset service providers, payment initiation service providers, some banks. And the one thing that brings everybody together is the regulatory framework. So all of these firms are subject to PSD2, the e-money directive, AML regulations. We have a focus on regulation and on the legal framework. Our objective is to make sure that businesses, like many of the ones in this room, are able to operate, expand, scale up within the UK and also within Europe and globally. So we have a bunch of branches across the EU because, as you know, none of these businesses are based in one geography. You've got to be everywhere. So we look at what's happening in the EU and globally as well as in the UK.
And there's always that big argument, isn't there, between, especially at the minute, the way regulation has tightened up. There's innovation and then there's regulation, and both of them need to go hand in hand, but sometimes there's some friction. I'd say at the moment we're seeing quite a lot of friction in that area, aren't we?
Yes, it's an ongoing challenge trying to explain to regulators how, yes, it's very important to manage the risk to customers, to businesses, but at the same time, if they really want, the economy to grow, if they want to support business, jobs, they've got to allow a little bit of leeway. So that's something that we're constantly, arguing or discussing or explaining to regulators and policymakers across the EU. And you're right, it seems to go a bit in ebbs and flows. Sometimes everybody's really keen to support the industry, and sometimes, there's a bit of a clampdown, which we're seeing a little bit in the UK at the moment.
But we do want to foster, with the APP fraud rules that are coming out in October, we do want to foster innovation because we don't want to see another financial crash like we had in 2009. So I think that'll always be an ongoing issue, and I think it's great that organisations like you are there to represent the industry, the businesses, the people that put their skin in the game, that are willing to innovate for us. So anyway, well, we've got your panel now, which is quite exciting. So payment strategies to accelerate e-commerce and online marketplace success, regionalization, localization, and cross-border payments. What are you hoping to achieve from it?
Well, we're looking at how you expand into other markets and some of the pain points that some of these retailers and marketplaces are experiencing. We have heard earlier today about the rise of marketplaces, and we're interested to find out what the, not only on the buyer side, so catering for buyers in different markets, but also on the seller side. So how do you cater for the sellers? How do you make sure that their needs are met? Because you want to get as many sellers as possible, as many buyers as possible, both on the platform to be successful.
Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to invite your panel down. Give them a round of applause. Hello?
Have a seat.
Thank you.
Okay, well, wonderful to have everybody here today. I'll just move this around. Hope everyone is well in the room as well.
Thank you. Do you want any water?
Yes?
I can do that.
Some silent. So we have a wonderful panel here made up of retailers, we've got some marketplaces, we've got others, and we have a PSP as well. So we're going to be looking at some of the payments, pain points that some of them have experienced and how they have looked to resolve those when it comes to cross-border, operating in other jurisdictions, or dealing with clients in different jurisdictions. What we'll do is we'll have a very quick round robin, so it'll be nice to hear a little bit about your business. Some of the jurisdictions that you operate in, or some of the areas you're looking to, some of the jurisdictions you're looking to operate in, and then after that, so first we'll just do an intro, and then after that we'll look at some of the pain points you've experienced. Shall we start? Let's go here.
Okay. Hi everyone, Jason Macklin from ESW, recently rebranded from eShop World. We are a platform business that helps global brands take their product direct to consumer in markets that they don't have anything more than a website or online operation. Looking after all of the payments, risk, logistics, reverse logistics, taxes and duties calculations for the shoppers.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pinky Chaudhary, Head of Product, Marketplace, and Retail Media at Kingfisher Group. As per McKinsey, global B2C e-commerce market space is valued to be $824 billion in 2024, and is expected to grow to $4.2 trillion by 2027. Like others, we also want a share in the pie. And we are Kingfisher Group. Judith, you were asking, what is Kingfisher Group? We have a lot of banners underneath us. So like B&Q, so we launched Marketplace in B&Q 2 years ago. We followed it with Iberia. We launched Marketplace in France earlier this year, and we'll be following with Poland very soon. Our motto is quite simple. We want to give that choice to our customers, and for our sellers, we want to give that access to that broader market space that we have got, and opportunity to scale. But that's only possible when the platform works seamlessly and quite simply. So cross-border trade for us is an extension of our core value proposition, and we want to give that opportunity for our sellers so that they can trade with us very simply.
Hey, Eddie Harrison, co-founder of Navro. If you think of a payment stack for a marketplace, has been getting money in from PSPs, acquirers, Klarna, whatnot, what you do with all that money in between, treasury, moving it around, being efficient with it, and then getting it out to your sellers. We do the second two parts of that. So we help you hold the money, store the money, move it around efficiently, and then pay it out to all of your sellers real time around the world.
Jamie Wadhams, I'm COO at OnBuy. We're a marketplace that brings together thousands of sellers and millions of buyers, starting in the UK. And one of our key differentiators is that we also, not just being a marketplace, we're bringing in cash back for the buyer. So all that complexity whereby if you go off-site for cash back and loyalty and, frankly, never see that cash back, we've brought that into our site so you can get real cash back, cash you can use on site, or cash you can extract from the platform, not 90 days, not 180 days, but after 30 days you can extract it. So it's a key point for us. One of the key things we're doing on top of that is we'll be launching this year into 10 plus international markets by the end of the year. So big plans there. My previous role, I did work internationally for another e-commerce outfit, so I've seen the pain, especially post-Brexit, all that fun stuff. Don't get me started on that one.
Hi, I'm Gisela Vivian. I work for Microsoft. I'm responsible for payments for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I'm talking about payments as first party. That's what our team does. And our payments platform, it caters for all of our main business. So it would be Xbox, Microsoft 365, Azure, our cloud platform, and also some physical goods.
Thank you, everybody. I hope everybody's got a good idea of the different panel members. So when we prepared for this panel, we had a chat about some of the big pain points that a lot of these businesses experience when they've been looking at a new jurisdiction or whether they're already there. So I want to drill down on some of the payments things, and I wonder maybe we'll start at the other end with Gisela. Do you want to give us a flavor of some of the things you've experienced over the years? Where are the big challenges that you as a business experience when you're trying to enter a new market, or you're already there, let's say?
Yeah, we are already there. We are operating nearly 200 markets at the moment. I think with the exception of the big key markets where we started with local processing, the vast majority will be starting with cross-border and optimizing from there. So I think there are lots of choice you need to make in terms of what's your target market, and this cross-border and having cards only, for example, is that enough for your business to access your target market? Or in some countries, you go local, and then, of course, you access more customers because the local payment cards for local cards will also be accepted. But at the flip side, you have all the regulations that you have to follow, and also all the FX costs that you might have to incur. So your margin is probably very key to consider that. So there is a lot of things to consider. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
Of course, okay. So you've got regulations, you've got different taxes, you've got different payment methods that people are used to. I think that some of that was covered in the previous session as well. What about you?
So, I mean, for us, like, let's be honest, expanding internationally is about acquiring more sellers and acquiring more, paying customers. How do you do that? When you go internationally, what do you need to achieve? And for us, it's, and this is going to be ironic here, right, is how do you get simplicity? And that is the big thing for us, is how do you ensure simplicity? And you talk about localization, and there is a trade-off between, okay, if you go to a marketplace, how local do you really need to be for both seller and for buyer to ensure they convert, versus the complexity you're adding in around everything, be it payment processing, be it fraud, be it all those different things that you need to be attuned to when you have these separate entities that allow localization, but ultimately creates more complexity into your business, which distracts you from what you're really trying to do there. So that is threading the needle for international expansion for us.
That's interesting. Eddie, I don't know if you want to come in here. So, PSPs hopefully will try and make that kind of job easier. And I'm sure you've got clients that, have certain pain points that you guys hope, what is sort of some of the pain points that you guys see in your...
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to quality, and payments can quite often, I don't know if you've ever been to one of those like horrid all-you-can-eat buffets where you can get like a Yorkshire pudding and tikka masala and sushi all on the same plate, and you're getting all the bits from around the world you want, but actually you'd probably get indigestion the next day as well. And payments can sometimes be all access through one connection, but quite low grade. And as you expand and look to optimize, sometimes you want to improve that quality, and it's more like going to a better restaurant, in this case, a better bank. And so where you really want to solve is, I don't want a Swedish krona account on a multi-currency IBAN on a UK BIC code. I want it in Sweden, tapped into the local rails. Same for Singapore, same for Poland. And if you can provide that in one ecosystem, then you can actually create some efficiencies without the complexity of having to go and build a patchwork quilt of getting a bank in Sweden and a bank in Norway. So it's trying to get quality, but also not overly complicated way.
I think that's similar to what Gisela, you were saying, that there's no one-size-fits-all. You've got to localize, if you like, even as much as you might want to have something that works globally. Sounds like you do have to get down at the local level. What about you, Pinky? What are some of the things that you've seen?
When it comes to cross-border challenges, to be honest, there are quite a few challenges, but there are 3 specific ones that I would like to touch base on. Apart from logistics challenge, this is not a logistics session, but logistics is a massive, massive blocker. But when it comes to other 3 challenges, I think that the acronym TIP encapsulates it quite well. So T for tax, liability, and reconciliation. Thanks to Brexit, after Brexit, the liability ascertainment, and then platforms kind of taking responsibility of reporting tax to HMRC, and the same rules are getting applied in Europe very soon. So the tax liability reconciliation. When it comes to I, with identity verification and fraud risks, the vicious cycle of KYPs and KYCs, we have got a good setup, but then we definitely can do much more in terms of streamlining that process and make it simpler for our sellers to come and kind of trade with us. And the last one for me is the biggest one, which is with P, payout orchestration, and cross-currency payments and FX. That is absolutely key when it comes to talking about the challenges. And this has a direct impact on our P&Ls, on our profit margins. So I think, to me, these are the 3 key areas. TIP is the one that to look out for.
Always love an acronym. What about you, Jason? What are some of the experiences that you've had?
Yeah, I think similar to Microsoft, right? We operate in almost every country in the world, and we've gone domestic in some of the bigger markets that we have. But even when you go domestic in those big markets, they are still markets where the brands we support aren't fully local. So they're very well-known brands. Like Nike, Lululemon, Max Mara in the fashion, Calvin Klein, etc. And you have to offer the payment methods that are relevant. And those aren't the mainstream ones. Like when we're purely cross-border, offering cards seems simple and gives you good coverage. But when you start offering the local payment methods, the couple of things that I think are worth looking at for, first and foremost, is how do you do refunds on those methods? Because not all of them are very easy or support refunds. And especially when you're selling clothing, fashion goods, there is a high return rate. So you have to refund those. Linked to that indirectly is then cash flow. Using those newer payment methods or local payment methods don't always have quick settlement, and then the refund is also slow. And so how do you manage that as a marketplace where you've got to pay your sellers or your providers in perhaps a quicker cycle time than you're going to get your funds either on settlement or refund back. So cash flow is one to look out for. And then being aware of what the local nuances are. So even if it is something like offering credit cards, which seems standard almost globally, in certain markets they do installments on credit cards, which is not the same as paying your credit card bill off over 5 months or 6 months and paying exorbitant interest rates. They have deals in certain markets, like Mexico, it's huge, where they'll have interest-free installments, which are funded by us as a seller or by the shopper, but it's a much lower interest rate for them to pay off in installments over 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So if you're not aware of that in those markets, you will lose a huge amount of sales to your competitors that do offer those nuanced local offerings.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really interesting. So I think some of you have touched on this already, but how do you resolve some of these challenges? Operating cross-border, you're trying to move payments cross
Currency.
FX, yes. Cross-currency, there we go. Cross-currency, trying to move funds into accounts and then pay them out to the right people. You've got refunds. How do you manage all of that? How should we do it? Back this way, maybe? Or what's your solution? I know that you guys have gone with a sort of local solution. You want to be, you've established entities locally, or you're working locally, and I think, but there's other ways, yeah.
Oh no, we don't. We have few global entities that you use, and the vast majority is cross-border in terms of not volume of money, but countries that we operate in. We do the cross-border operation. I think it's the stakeholder management is a key point here, as Thiago was mentioning before, because it's not only our team that needs to be involved. We need to have, a good understanding of how Microsoft wants to do business in Africa, let's say Nigeria or Egypt. There are always hot topics. If you're not local in Nigeria, you don't have access to all the domestic cards, for example, but then the super high cost of the transaction there. So we need to talk to tax, we need to talk to finance, we need to understand what the margin of the product is. Do you want to pay to do business there? Is that worth to keep the shop opened? Or is it okay that we just talk to that 5 or 14% of the population who has an international bank account? So it's a lot of conversation and understanding from many different points what's the best solution is for that market, and in my case, for that specific product. So in the UK, our business B2B is different than our B2C solution, so that because we manage lots of different products.
I mean, for us, we've taken strategic investment from someone that can partner with us. And that partner has a lot of, I can't say who they are yet, but they have a mechanism by which we can tap into. They really liked our growth profile. They particularly like the cashback element to it, which clearly gives complexity as well around the refunds and how you get that back to the customer. But we've taken that investment to enable that expertise to come to us. So it's not just a financial thing for them, but they can see where we're going, and they're like, oh, okay, we can get a part of that, and they can help us through that. But we become a role model for them as well. So there's taking that expertise, and I think to your point as well is targeting. Where for us we're at a different scale, right? So we are targeting certain countries where we know we think, touch wood, that we will be very effective in. And it's an interesting play when people go international as well, right? Because certain marketplaces will go very, very broad, countries-wise, really, really broad, and that shows good growth. But it starts to stall after a while, right? Because of the complexities that are there. We are going broad, but we expect to be specialisms in certain areas to start with as well. So I think that's a big play. Is where do you focus? And that for us is our product, our cashback, our partners are really important. And then how we speak to the sellers and customers about that is going to be really important for us.
I was going to ask Eddie, so how do you sort of support businesses that want to do this kind of thing? What's your advice to them, or how do you?
Yeah, I think it's, I'll try not to turn it into a plug about Navro, but I think it's about prioritization and where you spend your time. Like if you come to Navro and your problem is taking money in on a credit card in the UK and sending faster payments out, I don't really need to do anything for you. You're probably okay. If you need a Euro account, you're probably okay. Maybe you need a Euro account which is prefixed with an Italian IBAN because there's a specific use case. That's where maybe we can help you. But I also think it's about spending your time on the markets that deliver the most growth. There's no point optimizing. You go quite broad and you don't want to optimize for 5 basis points in Europe. Even speaking to customers, they're like, well, yeah, you can help me here, but it's not that incremental to me. Where it is major is I can help you launch in a new country where every basis point you make on your margin is completely new. It's a completely new country that was blocked off to us because of payments beforehand. And the challenges for a lot of teams is if you're Airbnb, life is great because you've got 200 people in your payments team and you're bigger than most fintechs. But anyone else where you've got 1 to 10, even sub 50 people in a payments team, you might not even have a payments engineering dedicated team. You have to fight tooth and nail to get something in your roadmap and your legal queue and how to operationalize it with different stakeholders across the business. That's not easy, so you have to pick your battles. And if you're picking your battles, you really want to try and find someone that can cover as much as possible. There's no good solving a problem in the Philippines and then solving a problem in Ecuador when you could have actually found someone in Latin America that solved the whole continent in one go. So it's prioritizing, but picking your battles out the gate.
And do you have examples of where you've been able to find a solution that works for several markets, and then you're able to bring that to? Yeah,
so I mean, we operate. We can send money anywhere in the world, bar sanctioned countries, of course, and we can accept money in all 50 scheme currencies that credit cards support, and most of those we've localized so they're in the domestic country. Again, Sweden, not Sweden and London. So we can help most marketplaces around the globe with their funds coming in from acquirers and PSPs and all of their payout sellers across the world and everything in between in terms of treasury flows. There are edge cases we haven't solved yet. We're a 2-year-old company for the record, so I can't solve every country perfectly locally, but our roadmap is to go and find the edge cases that solve a problem for a business like yours or a business like yours. We bring that to the table and you get everything else with it out the gate.
Sounds like a very valuable service. What about you, Pinky? What are some of the ways that you guys have sort of resolved these cross-border issues, if you have?
I'll not say we have 100% resolved. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here. Would be selling something, or maybe in Miami holidaying. But anyways, what we have gone for is a multiple PSP, multiple payout provider kind of setup. As Jason was pointing out, that there are localized market demands. So going for just one PSP, first and foremost thing, competitiveness. It allows you to go for multiple PSP. It gives you good competitiveness. Cannot go with a monopoly. Definitely, price is a factor here. So we get good prices. Eddie and I were talking about, how we have different kind of expectation in the Polish market that we want to launch, and I think different providers can offer different kind of solutions that is very much tailored to that particular market. But it has its own challenges. For example, especially when it comes to cross-border payments, we got to think about fluctuations in the currency itself that happens. And that can be proper, it can dent your profit margins straight away. Change in pound to euro, 1.2 to 1.3, straight away is a £3 dent to your profit margin. So that is something that is definitely we have tried to kind of combat it with with a fixed fee, like pretty much, but it's not one solution that fits all. So we want to experiment with different ideas, but that is something that we have we have made it working. The other one is the fees. So we have gone ahead and implemented a very Stripe-like destination charge model. So buyers transact on our platform, we take the money, we take out the commission, the conversion that has to happen, liability and taxes and duties, and then we pass on to that, the residual amount to our sellers. In that process, there's a conversion factor. When we have to do the cross-currency conversion, who's going to pay the fee for it? Sometimes we want to pass it on to the sellers, but in certain cases, we want to absorb that cost. So the PSP providers have to think about that how can we give that kind of configuration. And as you said, Eddie, the technological, it is good on the paper, but when it comes to those multiple configurations that has to be implemented, it's much easier said than done. And it is absolutely challenging. And this is where I think it will be good for the payments industry to come and sit with us, with the retailers, and then work out what are the optimum solutions and how we can solve this particular problem. And while we are doing all of this, the fluctuations in the currency is happening, while the fees are getting deducted, there's a delay that we are adding. By the time we have taken the money as a platform and we have passed it to the sellers, there are banks, PSPs, intermediaries. So by that time, the money has gone to the sellers. It's a substantial time. We want to do faster payments. For our UK merchants, for example, within the same day we can make the payments. But for the cross-border merchants, we can't do that. So how do we actually optimize it? Some of our sellers are big sellers, and they're making millions of pounds in a day, and they probably do not want to hold on to that cash for 14 days. Whereas on the other side, we have small sellers who probably that cash is required for their business. So how do we pass that money faster? So it's not a perfect solution that we have got. Multiple PSP, multiple payout providers setup that we have got, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. And we can definitely partner there to do some optimizations there.
One of the challenges, not every payments business will want to solve your problems because they make money off a lot of your problems.
Correct.
And so this is where...
Simplicity is not a good thing, right?
No, it's, they don't want to give you a Polish zloty account when they can auto-convert your Polish zloty into euros and make money on it. So, there's an element out there where incumbents always get to a point where they don't want to innovate too much because it cannibalizes margin. So you need to find others to fill in the gap that help them, or disruptive partners elsewhere.
Absolutely, Eddie. And Eddie and I were talking about it that very recently, one of the PSP providers from euro to zloty gave us 5 times the conversion rate. Jaw dropped on the floor. So that eats away our margins. So if you want a collaboration, a long strategic collaboration, then in that case, be slightly mindful of the rates that you're quoting us, because 5 times, I'm left with nothing in my pocket.
And you talked about there, and you've talked about cash flow and the risk around and those payments. But the risk around exchange rate movements as well, whilst you're holding that cash, is for a marketplace. Again, it's complexity, and it's how do you ensure that the sellers are reassured that you have that, you have their backs.
Yeah.
But who bears the risk when that currency, when Trump does what Trump does, and then something goes bananas? So that is a big part of the decision-making process in terms of cross-border movements of those monies.
Absolutely.
I would add as well, if having end-to-end reconciliation is super important and really complex. Like multiple PSPs is definitely the way to go, but the more you add, the more complex it becomes. They will not, they will not create standardized reporting to suit you because they have standardized reporting to suit thousands of merchants that they support. So especially also if you are presenting in a currency to suit a shopper in a local market, settling to yourself in a different currency, moving the money from one country to another country. There it's really important if you're a large business that you have a deep and strategic relationship with a corporate bank that really has thin margins when they charge you the FX conversion to your benefit. But also if you are changing a presentment currency on a website in a market, making sure you know what you're being converted at, settled to, and then paying out at, and what that conversion rate is super important. I know we've learned some really expensive lessons and having some gaps in our end-to-end reconciliation. The other thing I would say is making sure that, although we've got a very similar model to Microsoft, where we've got domestic entities selling, but we don't have resellers in those markets. We're not like a marketplace in that sense, where we might be doing hundreds of millions of sales in Australia, but we actually have zero settlements to our suppliers in Australia. So we've got to move all that money out of the country. Multi-currency accounts are something that should also be looked at, so that what you sell at, you get settled at, and you don't have to have an account in Australia to get settled in Australian dollars. So making sure your corporate bank supports that and you leverage that. They won't always tell you about it because they're making money on the margin of the FX, but it gives you the choice then to manage your FX with a fintech or another provider that doesn't have the legacy cost and margin built into what a big established bank might have when it comes to dealing with foreign currencies.
Okay, so there's a call for some bespoke solutions for some of the fintech providers out there who might be able to really address some of the needs that you have. Gisela, does that match with your experience, or do you have a different?
It does match with my experience, but I think we are in a privileged position that in order to work with us, all the suppliers that work with us, they have to match our standards. So, and we have everything very well established. So I think all the pain points you were mentioning here, they are absolutely true, but from our perspective, because the suppliers have to match our way of doing things, it's a little bit easier in a sense. And I think the other thing to watch out is regulation. Of course, PSD2, PSD3 is a big one for Europe, but also recent changes in Egypt, for example, changed the way the limits to cross-border transactions that customers could pay. And are we ready to, do we close the shop, or do we work on a local process? So keeping an eye on all these different markets, how things work, and how you need to be a step ahead to react to that.
And do your PSP providers, do they support you in that? Do
They
pay
have
attention
to.
to what's happening? They inform you, and then you have to.
Yes, yeah. So they have to, and this is an added value. So choose the provider that knows that region well, and will be able to help you navigate, the complexity. So every market's complex. So getting that knowledge and ideally having someone local in that place really helps.
Well, I think we're actually coming close to the end of the session already. I didn't expect that so quickly. So I think it would be interesting to hear from you. We have heard a few of your suggestions for, like a silver bullet. So we have a few from the retailers in the panel. It'd be interesting to find out what would you love to see in payments? What kind of solution to what problem would you love to see? And then Eddie, do you want to tell us a bit, allow you to say whatever you like, I think, about
probably don't want to let me say whatever I like.
Fix everyone's problem.
You have 5.5 minutes, go.
Let's start over here. Do you want to?
I think it's not a silver bullet, but I've been waiting for a long time for open banking to really take off. And I think we're getting to that point now where, like I said, we're getting an ecosystem where it's being adopted by buyers and shoppers, and the technology and the providers are stabilizing. There's going to be some that survive and some don't. But I think all big merchants, we're in the billions of euros of sales. Every basis point makes a big difference, to Pinky's point, right? And so if you can get instant payments at lower cost, that takes business away from the big schemes, and the schemes will start thinking differently, if not only investing and buying in open banking businesses. For me, that would be something that I look forward to, and I look at where you see account-to-account sort of payments happening really well, like UPI in India or PIX in Brazil. If that can start happening in other bigger markets in the world, I'd be a much happier person.
I should have said probably on the cross-border silver bullet. More precise. My question.
I think
UPI cross-border is not easy, believe me.
I think open banking is a good one. If I have to say silver bullet, then I would say CBDC, central bank digital currency. And that apparently is the silver bullet that's going to solve all our cross-border woes. So if I'm looking forward to that, I've been reading about the model. I think that seems like a good idea. It also seems like a good idea because almost 62 or 67% of the countries all over the world have started to invest on it. So I think that is something that I'm definitely looking forward to. Yeah.
It will be interesting, especially if they connect together.
Oh, yeah,
the
absolutely.
central banks.
Yeah. It brings that transparency and trust itself, and then it's central banks, so then it's an equivalent of your cash that is digitized. So I think it definitely brings that trust. And for retailers, because we do combat with a lot of fraud risk along with the payments industry, I think that will bring that transparency, trust, and simplify the whole process. So on paper, definitely looks exciting.
Jamie, do you want to?
I don't think a silver bullet exists, right? I mean, we're talking a very complex thing. If we'd had the silver bullet, someone would have found it by now. But I think there's real movement towards how do you make this, how do people create dominance in certain areas? And if you create, dominance is an anti-competitive word, we know that, right? But there's a level of adoption whereby someone like a retailer like us can go with people and go, that's your problem to deal with. Make it simpler for us. Let us focus on the things that we want to do, which is around sellers and traders and making that thing work. What we don't want is headaches about cross-border money movements and refunds and all those things, because that is taking away our IP and our what we want to do and what we're good at. So someone and a group of people really, it's not going to be one person. It just doesn't work that way. But if people can partner together and help us go through that process and provide that easier solution for everyone, then that's where they're creating value. Complexity doesn't create value. Actually making things simple creates the value out of it, right? So if they can do that, that's where we will go. And whether the central piece works or not, who knows? But that needs to create confidence. But there's that confidence building by people partnering together and giving us an easier solution to deal with.
Yeah, ideally you don't need to know about the payment at all, do you, as a customer or seller? You just want the money to come into your account or leave it, without you
That'd be lovely,
having to do much
yeah.
about it. Gisela.
Yeah, I don't think there is one thing that could change everything. I'm now being creative here. I think one thing that would be great is to have, because for you to have access to people who don't have an international credit card, you have to go local. And that's a long and lengthy and complex process to do that. So I think if there's something out there that could give access to domestic cardholders in multiple markets, because I think one thing you said that is key if you're managing a global business is prioritization. So especially if you work with the US or UK, you're always going to prioritize the things that go to those markets because the volume you're going to generate is much higher. But how can you get like a Pan-Africa or Middle East, something that will have access to lots of customers without creating the burden of having to go local in each of these countries? So that would be my creative way of answering this question.
Oh, I think that's perfectly valid. Yeah. Eddie, do you want to say anything about?
Yeah, so I think you can do cross-border A2A open banking payments. I think you need a really big provider that can stitch it all together, and for it to be successful, you need it to be central bank backed like PICs. Yeah. Otherwise, the only people that make money off it are selling it to high-risk merchants, and it's not built up enough and forced enough for other areas. I think you touched on the point about corporate banks, having a good corporate bank. There's probably only really 2 good global corporate banks, and actually they're quite hard to get banked by. You have to be, a couple of billion in volume to walk in the door. Probably not a problem for Microsoft, but barrier to entry being very high there. Really early stage marketplaces, Stripe Connect will do everything for you out of the box. But the moment you're in that middle bit, which is quite fragmented, new countries, new markets, new complexity, there's a delta between the biggest acquirers from a payment acceptance perspective and what they can do from a payout, treasury, operational perspective. And so not quite a silver bullet, because you're right, it doesn't exist, and that's before you get into KYB, KYC of marketplace sellers. But you want someone in the middle that can help bridge you before the point you can knock on JP Morgan's door from the point when you're just banking with Barclays in your local market and give you the coverage as if you were banked by JP and Citi, and give you all the local wallets and the local payment methods that are relevant around the world. So it's finding someone to help you get from point B to that next point. It's not a silver bullet, but there are options out there.
Lots of silver bullets, maybe,
Yeah, a few.
to jointly create the perfect solution. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody on the panel. It was wonderful to hear your perspectives. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I shall hand back over to Angela. Is that right?
Hello, can you hear me? Don't forget that we have the app, the ePay Summit app. If anybody wants to ask any questions, please use the app. And I'd like to say thank you very much, everybody.